Welcome to the Self-Led Leader. I'm Dr. Christina Ady, social psychologist, and in this episode, we talk about why jumping straight into strategies or performance tips is ineffective, why your nervous system is key to your presence and your ability to lead yourself, why exploring your beliefs, your triggers, and your self-talk is so important for your growth and alignment. We dive into the concept that real leadership begins with self-leadership. And most people haven't been taught what that actually means. Let's get right into it.
Welcome to the Self-Led Leader, a podcast for high performers who want to lead from alignment, not expectation. I'm Dr. Christina Ady, a social psychologist, and I'm here to help you lead with clarity, not chaos. This show is about what happens before the strategy, your mindset, your nervous system, the inner leadership that shapes everything you say and do. Because presence isn't about being loud, it's about being aligned. Let's get right into it.
Welcome to the inaugural episode since the rebrand. If you're new here, welcome. So excited for you to join the community and start your journey to developing your mindset, your resilience, and your ability to lead in a way that feels great to you. If you're not new, if you're a longtime listener, welcome back. So excited to be here and so grateful for all of the amazing feedback I have received. You see, self-leadership, the concept of self-leadership, has been a deep passion of mine since childhood. I remember times when I was a child where I would be fascinated, analyzing why is it that two people with the same goal, going through the same motions, end up with different results. Why is it that one of them can develop a resilient mind and push themselves past their own limits to achieve success while someone else can crumble and not come nearly as close? When I was a child, I used to participate in a lot of sports. My personal goal was to be on every single sports team in middle school, in high school that I could be. I did everything from cross-country running, track and field, soccer, basketball, baseball, volleyball. I did it all. And it was interesting to me the entire time to analyze the attitudes and the beliefs of those around me. And one of the most frustrating things to me when it came to team sports was moments when it was challenging, when we were losing, when we were under pressure, and my teammates would give up. They would be discouraged. They would feel like winning was a lost cause, and they would quit preemptively. They just seemed to lack some of that drive to be able to push themselves, persevere, have that grit to at least try and push your own boundaries and win. And so I flourished in individual sports. Team sports, like I said, were a little bit harder. And if I'm being honest, it was moments like this and analyzing the differences in everyone's beliefs and mindsets from such a young age that pushed me down over a decade of formal education in psychology. Because the root of the question is, when it comes to you and your mind, how far are you willing to push yourself? How well are you currently leading yourself? Do you take time to reflect on your ability to lead yourself? Do you reflect on moments of stress, moments of high pressure, and how you perform? Now, this is a really interesting question, because if we back up for a second, starting with self-leadership, what is this? You see, from my perspective, self-leadership is really the ability to lead yourself before you even attempt to lead anyone else. It's how you show up. It's how you talk to yourself. It's what you choose to believe. But more importantly, it is how you deal with stress and pressure and moments of challenge. And I personally believe that there's a lot of really amazing information, really incredible tips and tricks and strategies, but they are not one size fits all. And if you've ever had this experience where maybe you were on a YouTube or another podcast and you were looking for motivation, maybe you were about to work out and you wanted a banger playlist. Maybe you wanted a nice motivational speech to jazz you up and get you in the right mindset. And you would have quickly noticed that not all are created equal. And your best friend may love one that just does not resonate with you. And this is important to know because it is a massive part of self-leadership. You see, here on this podcast, My philosophy that I hope to pass on to you is this idea of understanding yourself, understanding your beliefs, your strengths, who you are, how you would describe yourself, and how you prefer to function. It's from this inner understanding, from taking the time to reflect on these questions, that you then get a holistic picture of who you really are. And that is when you can then use any perceived limitations to your advantage. When you know what your flaws are, when you know what your drivers are, you then get to combine them in a way that works for you. So let me give you an example. Being able to lead yourself during moments of pressure is very hard. Not everyone is able to do it. That's why so many individuals seem to blow up, get angry, have a fit, or maybe on the other end of the spectrum, they shut down, they avoid it at all costs, they're unable to cope after the fact. These things happen, but they happen because there is a lack of self leadership in place. There is a lack of self knowledge and a lack of understanding of how you deal with situations. You see, the first step is really understanding how you are reacting to different situations. What happens when you are stressed? Are you able to identify when your nervous system is overloading? And you see, when you're able to catch moments where your nervous system has entered dysregulation, you then understand why you are coming from a different reaction than what you would like. I feel like nervous system regulation is not talked about nearly enough within the leadership space. And it is such a crucial piece of the puzzle. Because when your nervous system is dysregulated, when you have anxiety spiking through your body, when you have adrenaline going through it, when you're getting the shakes because there's too much cortisol and you're feeling the pressure, when you are overstimulated because maybe there has been too many people talking to you, too much noise, too many things keeping in mind. When your nervous system is dysregulated, it becomes incredibly harder to re regulate yourself and handle the stressful or high pressure situation that you are in the moment. If you're a parent, you may relate to this. If you're ever overstimulated, your kids are talking to you, your kids are tantruming, dinner is burning, the alarm is going off, the TV is blasting, and maybe you lose your cool, you yell at your kids, and then you feel terrible about it. And the thing is, we've all had these situations, we've all had these experiences. And the important thing to note is that when you are in it, when you are in a moment of dysregulation, your entire perspective changes. The way that you think about the situation changes, and the way that you think about yourself and your reaction changes. Have you ever been out in public and saw someone that was just having a complete meltdown? The other week, I took my kids to IKEA. It's like a furniture store, massive. You walk around, there's one entrance, you have to walk through the entire store before you're able to get out, and it can take hours. And there was a couple there, and we kept running into them accidentally. And every single time we did, the lady was clearly dysregulated. She was yelling, she was physically pushing her partner, she was having the equivalent of a tantrum in the middle of the store. And every single time I saw her, she would be saying different things that were giving me pieces of the puzzle. So the first time I ran into this couple, she was yelling something about having walked through the store for hours, not wanting to be there, and feeling disrespected because her partner was making fun of her with the toilet brushes or something like that. The next time I saw her, she was yelling about not wanting to be there and feeling like she was wasting her time. Time after that, she was yelling because she was feeling overwhelmed by the amount of families that she was running into, and she was upset because she hadn't seen her own family in years. And so myself, as an empathetic person, as a psychologist, I look at this through a lens of compassion and understanding. And really, anyone who's been in that situation, here's the important thing to know. When you are dysregulated, you feel like you are in the middle of a storm. Everything going on around you may be overwhelming, overstimulating, maybe over the top. Whereas if you were not dysregulated, the exact same thing wouldn't matter nearly as much. But when you're in that storm, it's easy to feel justified for how you're feeling. It's easy to rationalize it to yourself. It's easy to tell yourself that I'm right, I'm seeing things correctly, I'm reacting appropriately because all these other external circumstances have wronged me. But when you're able to calm yourself and get outside of that storm and see it from a different perspective, you begin to realize how untrue those things really are. Or even if they are true, how much blown out of proportion they become when you are dysregulated. Now, why am I going into all this in so much depth? I really need you to understand that when you are learning to understand yourself, because you need to understand yourself before you are able to understand others better, it is so important to understand what your limits are when your nervous system begins to get overloaded with stress, anxiety, etc., and how you react to it. Those three pieces are extremely crucial and make up a large part of the puzzle. When you're able to understand how you react to stress and what your breaking point is, you are able to handle stressful situations so much more effectively. Because then you start to identify when you are almost at your breaking point. So now, rather than going past your limit and having a meltdown, reacting in a way that you regret, you're able to catch yourself ahead of time and begin to regulate it. That may look like deep breaths. That may look like stepping away for a moment. If that's with a team, that may look like ending a meeting and rescheduling it for another day. We can have a deep dive episode into nervous system regulation if you'd like that. Leave me a comment and let me know. Happy to do that. But it's this initial understanding of what your breaking points are that lets you deal with it appropriately. Now, on the flip side, it is important to understand what your motivations are and what your beliefs are so you can lean into those. If your personal motivation is to be a high performing leader and you understand that your breaking point is, let's say, 7 meetings a day, well, you can lean into your desire to be a high performing leader and mitigate that by perhaps making sure you are scheduling no more than 5 meetings a day and filling that time with additional tasks that will be productive and lean into the high performance desire that you have for yourself. Or maybe on the other end, you've had the 7 meetings scheduled. You know that this is your breaking point and you will be exhausted by the 5th meeting, much less how you're going to get through the 6th and 7th. But now, with that inner understanding, you can continue to remind yourself that being a high performing leader is important to you, that being a calm, regulated leader is important to you. And now you may intentionally take those deep breaths, take that 5-minute break to regulate, maybe do some jumping jacks to release some of that extra cortisol in between. And now you're able to lean into your motivations and use them to your advantage to do the things that you have to do anyway more effectively. And that is the power of self-leadership. It's about knowing how to handle yourself under pressure and under moments of happiness and excitement and joy. It's about knowing what your emotional patterns are so that you understand what your triggers are, so that you understand how to align yourself with the types of actions that you want to be taking, so that you are intentional about your performance and not reactive to whatever is happening around you based on everyone else. When you can hold yourself to a standard of communicating clearly, of remaining calm under pressure, of performing consistently in whatever area you choose, that's when things start to shift for you. That's when your presence begins to land and inspire others. That's when you begin to feel the power of your own leadership and be able to carry that on to others. And that is a very powerful state to be in. Now that you're getting a better sense of why self-leadership is so powerful, let's talk about your inner dialogue. Part of your ability to be an amazing self-leader and your ability to lead others effectively is to understand the way that you speak. You see, I'm a strong believer that your words are the windows to your subconscious minds. I'll say that again. My philosophy and what I teach my clients is that all the words that you choose to say are a reflection of what you really believe. Although you may be familiar with concepts, again, tips, tricks, hacks, and strategies to speak more confidently. What ends up happening when you're under pressure? When you are nervous, when you are bored, or when you are tired? You fall back into your habits. You do what is the norm for you. That's why tips and tricks and hacks don't work long term, because they are not a habit yet, and they are not effective in those moments where you have a higher cognitive load, where you have way too much on your mind, and you're not able to think about how to implement the hack while thinking about the other thing that you need to think about and putting it all into action. You will always fall back to the baseline of your habits. And how you speak to yourself is the foundation of your habits. It is the thing that is the biggest indicator to you of what you actually believe. So, it is important to start catching yourself and noticing what you are thinking and what you are saying. Depending on your familiarity with the concept of personal development, of your thought process, of your belief systems, if it is harder for you to catch yourself thinking, start by catching yourself with what you are saying. You see, we have over 60,000 thoughts a day. About 90% of those thoughts are automatic. That means they just happen. They just happen without us realizing. And the catch is the majority of those thoughts are negative and are a repetition of whatever the heck we said to ourselves the day before and the day before and the day before. So if you're telling yourself, I'm not good at something, if you're telling yourself, I'm not very resilient, guess what? You're telling yourself, I'm not very resilient multiple times a day, every single day. And then when you try to act resilient, it will be extremely hard because you've got a lingo loop, you've got a language loop going over and over telling you, I'm not good, I'm not resilient, I'm not good, I'm not resilient, and you are doing it to yourself. However, sometimes it is so much easier to catch ourselves when we say something out loud because we hear it. We actively hear it. So start by auditing your inner dialogue. What are you saying? What are you believing? And is it in line with what you'd actually like to believe about yourself as an amazing self-led leader? The second thing that I'd like you to audit is how you handle uncertainty. When you are in a place of ambiguity, maybe you're waiting for someone to get back to you. Maybe you need to make a decision and you don't know if you should go with option A or option B. Maybe you're asked for something and you don't know what the right answer is. Observe how you handle yourself in those moments of uncertainty. Do you tend to try to be over controlling? Do you tend to get overwhelmed and maybe procrastinate? Do you try to stay present? Do you try to avoid the entire thing and delegate it to someone else? There's no right or wrong. It is just information. But this information is so crucially important for you to understand about yourself. Because if you're able to be honest with yourself and notice, oh my goodness, when I'm in a place of uncertainty, I do everything I can to avoid it and have someone else make the decision for me. Well, now you're able to accurately look at the implications of that. If someone else is making a decision for you, what does that say about your ability to lead yourself? If you are noticing that you are over controlling, micromanaging, trying to regulate every single detail of a decision, especially if other people are involved, well, then now you have really valuable information for how you are leading or managing others. Because if you are controlling them, you're not really leading them. Again, no right or wrong, just valuable information to get you started. Once you've had a moment, pause the episode if you need to. Make sure you come back to it because we're about to get into the strategies. But once you've had a moment to reflect on how you speak to yourself, how you show up, how you act in moments of uncertainty, what your limit is for your stress levels and your nervous system, well, now you're getting a much more beautiful, holistic picture of who you are. And if you, your best friend, your coworker, your peer go through this episode together, you will find that you will get different answers. And there's beauty in that. We are all different. We all have different goals. We all have different motivations. And understanding yourself is so incredibly powerful because it lets you begin to tailor the way that you show up in life, the way that you structure your schedule, the way that you choose to do your work, to lean into your motivations, to empower yourself with better beliefs, to lead the way that you actually want to lead and not lead the way that you were unconsciously leading without realizing. So, how do you begin to actually build positive self leadership? Well, the first place is to regulate your nervous system. The way that you are able to show up is, in a very large part, a massive reflection of your nervous system. Even if you have the purest intentions, if you have a heart of gold and you just want to help, you won't be able to if you are in a place of stress and dysregulation and anxiety. If you feel like hiding in a corner under the blanket because you want to cry and roll into a ball of stress, you cannot lead and help others from that place. But when you're able to regulate your nervous system, the same intentions remain, the same beautiful mind of yours remains, but now you show up in a much better state. Now you're actually able to listen better. You're able to have conversations. You're able to do the things in a much better way that you couldn't when you were a ball of stress in a corner crying. And that's okay because we all have those days. But it's important to understand that and be intentional with regulating your nervous system. Most people wait until they are way too far past the red line to begin. You wait until you're having that breakdown, or your eyes twitching from stress, or you're way over the top and you've lost your appetite, or you just ate 7 chocolate bars in a row because you're an emotional eater and you catch yourself saying, okay, I must be stressed. That's too late. Instead, start being proactive, start being intentional. Can you take a moment, maybe at the top of the hour, where you just take 3 deep breaths? Maybe you do 5 minutes of box breathing at the end of every night. Maybe you make it a point to add a little bit of extra movement into your life. I'm a personal believer that exercise is one of the best forms of stress regulation. I'm a big fan of doing cardio and strength training as a form of stress release. And so, can you get yourself to a place where you are starting to incorporate the stress management techniques that you love, not the ones you saw on YouTube, not the ones your best friend is doing, not the ones that your mom recommends, the ones that you actually enjoy doing, so that you actually do them. And you do them preemptively to regulate your nervous system to get you to a place of being calm before you need that because you're too far past the red line. That's the first thing. The second thing, start to develop an awareness of what your triggers are. What makes you feel like you want to stop? What makes you feel like I don't want to try something new? What makes you feel like you are being a failure? When you know what they are, it actually releases some of the emotional power that they have over us. So, if, for example, you know that it is important for you to be seen as competent and articulate, if someone has feedback for you, maybe on a report that you wrote, and being articulate and competent is important to you, and the report had feedback, maybe correcting some errors, correcting a train of thought, rewriting a couple things, it's easy to take that as negative feedback, as an attack on your identity, as evidence of your incompetence, and activate that trigger within you. But when you know that that's what's happening, it's a little bit easier. It's a little bit more emotionally freeing to be able to rework that, to know what's happening and put a label on it and understand that you're feeling down because of the feedback that you received, rather than having it as an ambiguous gray cloud of emotional uncertainty that you don't know where it came from, you don't know why you're experiencing it, and you don't know what to do about it. When you have that self diagnosis and you understand what is happening within yourself, you are more empowered. Even if nothing else changes, that awareness alone is a crucial first step in the process. But I'll take it one step further. Once you know what your triggers are, that's when you start to work on them. And that is also when you start to look for contradictory evidence to show you that you actually are amazing at the thing that you think you're not. You start taking steps to try to be more articulate. Maybe you speak up in meetings. Maybe you begin recording yourself and practicing. Maybe you begin making it a point to go to networking events and speak articulately in front of strangers. You start to build up the evidence that you are good at this. You start to be intentional about it. You start to lead yourself to develop the skill that is important to you. So then, when you get that feedback that the report needs to be rewritten in this section, it stops being a personal attack and it starts being feedback that you perceive as growth. And that is a beautiful part of the transformation. And when you find yourself in that, I want you to catch yourself, applaud yourself, buy yourself a slice of cake, because that is a beautiful part of the journey that takes so much growth and transformation to get to. And you can. Once you identify what your triggers are, lean into your motivations, and start finding the evidence to show you that you have what it takes to be good at what you want to be good at. So, I hope this episode has been helpful for you. I want you, before we wrap up, to take a moment and really pick the one area where you feel like you're doing amazing. And then pick the one area where you feel like you're not really leading yourself in a way that you want to be leading. Think about what emotions come up. Think about what emotion you're avoiding in that area. And so for the next week, you're going to go through, work on the things that we talked about, and see what's the evidence that I can actually be good at this? What am I saying to myself that's making me think I'm not good at this over and over and over? What emotion am I feeling that I don't know what it is that I can actually sit down, reflect on, and diagnose to be able to give myself a little bit of that emotional freedom and a little bit of that step forward that I need to go on my self-led leadership journey? You've got this. You don't need more confidence hacks. You just need to understand your own psychology, the psychology of who you are, why you shut down, and why you perform the way that you do. Because everything starts with your psychology and your ability to show up for yourself. This was episode 1. I'm Christina. I'm so excited to hear about your biggest breakthroughs, and I'll see you in the next episode.